Welcome everybody to the last meeting of 2020 of the Diamond Valley Writers Guild. We will not meet obviously in November or December. That falls during holiday seasons. I want to start with anybody. Does anyone have anything where you've had something printed, or you've sold something, or you started something? Anything along those lines? Anybody like to say?
Yeah, I'll say something.
All right.
We started, thanks to Karen Robertson's recommendation, we started a Nano group. We've got about 10 people in it. So we're going to do NaNoWriMo, and we meet every Monday at 1 o'clock on Zoom. And we kind of, right now, we're just sort of like, rumbling at the curb, waiting to take off. And we're exchanging ideas about how to prepare and everything. And so that's been really, really fun. And I feel very artistically inspired.
So I suppose that all of you who are doing NaNoWriMo are doing lots of planning right now, like Cindy with all her material in the background there. So anybody have anything else? No? All right. Well, then let's move on. And Cheryl, where are you?
Right here.
There you are, right there where I expected you to be. All right, you are now up, and tell us about straitjackets.
Okay, all I wanted to say was I wanted to thank everybody for their submissions. The editors are going through reading and editing now, and we're going to be meeting as a group. I think it's next Wednesday. And so once we meet, I will be sending out the edit that the team comes up with. So be looking for emails from me, and then respond back in 3. And then we're looking at maybe 2 weeks, thinking of getting the magazine up and running. Does that sound right, Ellen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Do you want to say anything about the at this spot about the
book?
Yeah, the book.
Best of
okay, so
jackets.
Well, yeah,
Anthology.
Yeah, we had the special meeting with the board, and I think what we're waiting on is the board to vote. Is that where we are?
Yeah, I am reworking.
We approved it. We approved it.
You approved that, right? The only thing that needs to be approved is the contract, which I have tweaked a little bit, and I will be bringing to the next board meeting.
Okay, and then once the issue's over, then we will start going gung ho on editing each piece. And I think Greg has brought in the contests, the submissions for contests. And those will be included. That was a recommendation from Michelle. And so those will be included also in the anthology, and we will be going from there.
I would volunteer to do the formatting and layout, which I do, professionally for other people. And I would do it as a volunteer job.
Okay, thank you. Greg has done an outstanding job of laying it out. Well, it looks great with the version that he's got. We're going to go with the print version first, because there's issues with doing the ebook in layout for poetry. So we're going to focus on doing the print version first, and then we'll take it up again. Okay.
Okay. Excellent.
Can I say something real quick?
Thank you, Marge.
Michelle.
Cheryl, you might, I don't know if everyone here in this thing is even aware that what Stray Kids is doing, that we're doing an anthology. You might want to describe the project. Maybe people in this meeting that hasn't even heard about this.
Okay.
You might have board of directors it was brought to, so.
Okay, yeah, okay, so this project was brought up by Greg, and it's a project to do an anthology of 5 years of the best submissions that were submitted to Straitjackets magazine, and it's going to come out in book form through Amazon, and it will be if I remember right, it'll be available to all the authors for one-time first order at a reduced price. And then it's going to take us a while, though, to get to that point. What's really going to be important is that we're able to reach all of the authors. So we might be reaching out to some of you to see if you have contact information. The authors aren't current, and if you want to include their submissions. But anyway, it's going to be a book of Straight Jacket's best for 5 years, covering 5 years. And so that people can see their work in print and something to sell and put on our tables when we're at the book sales, wherever we are. Ellen and Joe, do you want to say anything else?
No, that's.
Or Greg, do you want to say anything else?
Okay.
No, I think you were very clear on, the whole project. It's going to be a little time consuming, particularly, getting in contact with all the authors of their stories and making sure that they kind of feel comfortable with the project. Putting it together and getting it printed is not that time consuming. It can all be put together in a matter of weeks. But all this grunt work that's being done right now is the time consuming hard work that goes into a project like this.
I will say.
Go ahead.
I will. Sorry. I will say that we are asking each of the authors to sign a contract, and we're making the contract as simple as possible. You won't need to hire a lawyer to to review it. Basically, it just says that you agreed to do this, and you're not being paid, and you still own rights to your piece, but not to the book. That's kind of a summation of the contract.
I've had a couple of things that were reprinted in anthologies, and I got to tell you, anybody who holds back on that is missing something. I think it's exciting to have your work said, hey, this is the best of this year. And I think that's a really neat idea. And it's not the best of this year, it's the best over the last 5 years. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. I think and I think seeing a hardback copy of it, I think that's going to be, not hardback, a hard copy of it. It's exciting. Okay, next up we have Sandy with one of her golden tips. You're muted, Sandy.
Because she's way up north.
Yeah. It's delayed connection, yes.
Looks like Siberia.
Okay.
There you are.
There you are.
All right. Writer's Digest had what they called a vintage reprint. And the reprint was by Brian Garfield, 1973. And what intrigued me is that article apparently gave John Grisham his start. And there were 10 rules of suspense. And I thought it might be helpful for those who are currently working on a novel or who are going for the NaNoWriMo. So the first one was start with action, explain it later. That's an extension of Raymond Chandler's famous dictum, when things slow down, bring in a man with a gun. Make it tough for your protagonist. Give him a worthy antagonist and make things look hopeless. Plant it early, pay it off later. So don't bring in new characters, facts at the end to help solve the protagonist's dilemma. Give the protagonist the initiative. All good dramatic writing centers upon conflict, interior like alcoholism, or exterior dangerous enemies or an alien police force. Give the protagonist a personal stake. No longer is it acceptable for the hero to solve a mystery just because it presents an interesting puzzle. Give the protagonist a tight time limit, then shorten it. Choose your character according to your own capacities as well as his. And one important point of that was don't use your protagonist as an accomplished professional spy unless you are prepared to do the research and create a character that's really convincing with those skills. Know your destination before you set out, i.e., know the ending so you don't have a weak anticlimactic ending. And don't write anything you wouldn't want to read. And part of what he talked about was if you don't read romance novels, don't write a romance novel just because it sells better, or the same with any of the genres. And the encouragement is absolutely read in the genre that you are writing in. So that
Those are
launched
great
John
tips.
Grisham.
Yeah, they are.
If
Those are
you've
great
not read
tips.
Brian Garfield, I got to tell you, Brian Garfield was a terrific writer who wrote mostly kind of thrillers. What was that series of movies that Charles Bronson made where he was
Death Wish.
Death Wish.
Mhm.
And he wrote Death Wish and a sequel to it, and it's absolutely the exact opposite intention of what the Charles Bronson movie was. The first of the two was a terrific story, and he also occasionally wrote a Western. That's where I first got to know him. He's writing Westerns to start with, and then he started writing these thrillers. And he was a terrific writer. He was very much the kind of writer that wrote scenes and had really characters that you could lock into. I really like Brian Garfield. Well, thanks very much, Sandy. It's another great tip.
Quick question, Sandy, can you email a link to that article, or can you somehow get it so I can share it on the blog post recap?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Can you send that to all of us?
Well, I'll send a link to the blog post. I usually wrap it all up in the blog post, and then, yeah, all the goodies are there.
And now, Sandy, I hate to call on you again, but if you would like to explain the elections, then I will hold them in just a moment.
We we have 3 open positions: secretary, member at large, and vice president. I was going to say vice principal. That's my old background, but no, vice president. And you can nominate yourself, or someone can nominate you. So don't hesitate to nominate yourself if you would like to run for one of those 3 positions.
Okay. At this point, and we have these elections each year at this time. Next year at this time it'll be for president and treasurer, I believe.
Yes.
So right now, let's start with the member at large. Do we have any nominations for member at large? Yes, Lynn.
I would like to nominate, it's my honor to nominate Michelle Bassett to serve in that position as member at large.
But I'm going to decline the nomination and nominate Lynette Tucker for that position.
Okay.
It's kind of like
Hot potato. Yeah, I'm going to pass that hot potato.
Well, okay then.
Okay, so Lynette Tucker has been nominated. Do we have a second to the nomination?
Well,
I'll second it.
You got a second. All right. And at this spot, do we have a nomination? You accept that nomination, Lynette?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Question.
Do we have any other?
Daniel has a question.
Oh, Daniel, I'm sorry. Daniel, where are you?
That's all right. I'm just curious.
There he is.
Unless you already said it, what does a member at large do?
Okay, I will have Michelle explain that, since Michelle is our present member at large.
You're on the hot plate now.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Member at large is a position that doesn't have an ongoing monthly responsibility like some of the other offices do, but you do attend the board meeting every other month. And as a board member in general, you got to come up with a couple of programs during the year. Find speakers or whatever. It's kind of a group effort to do that. But otherwise, you don't have an ongoing job. It's a member at large. You talk with members of the organization and bring things back to the board of directors meetings, suggestions. A lot of times I'd reach out to people and ask what things they wanted to see in that. That's about it. But it's pretty low key. It's fun. I enjoyed it.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have another nomination, or is this the only nomination? Seeing no other nominations, and let me explain how we're doing this. We'll call for a vote now of members. That's fine. If there are 2 or more people for an office, Sandy will make up a ballot and send it out to members later today sometime, right, Sandy?
Yes.
So if it's 1, we can vote right now. So we only have 1 nomination for member at large for the next, it's a 2-year term. And Lynette Tucker is, all those in favor of Lynette, say aye.
Aye.
It carries unanimously. Okay. You just won political office here.
Congratulations, Lynette.
Yes.
Hey, Lynette.
Thank you, everybody.
Yay.
So
And
that
she
was
spent very little on campaigning.
Very little.
I think I saw your name on a yard sign.
Hopefully
Okay,
it wasn't
so
lost dog or something.
so next we have as secretary. Do we have any nominations for a secretary? Dennis.
Yes, I'd like to, as the outgoing secretary, I'd like to nominate Karen Robertson. And she comes with some great credentials. She's been a speaker for our group and has some background there.
All right. Karen Robertson has been nominated.
I'll second it.
Okay, second. And now, do we have any other nominations? Cindy, did you have your hand up?
I'm just agreeing.
Oh, okay.
Caught up.
Any other nominations for secretary? Well, hearing none, all those in. Does Karen accept? Yes, I should ask her.
Yes.
Karen, you should. Yes. Otherwise, that might. Yeah. No, I don't want it. Yes. All those in favor of Karen, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Goes. Now, next, and is a nomination for vice president, not vice principal, vice president. Do I hear any nominations? Silence.
I would nominate Sandy.
Second.
That's right. Yeah.
Sandy?
I decline, but I would like to make a nomination. And if she will accept, she will be terrific. I'd like to nominate Michelle Bassett for vice president.
Do I hear a second?
I'll
Got a
second
second.
that.
I'll
All
second.
right. Anybody else wish to nominate someone or nominate themselves for vice president?
Does Michelle accept?
Does Michelle, do you accept?
Do I have a choice?
Not really, no. Okay, all those in
Anybody
favor.
else interested in stepping up?
Yes,
I'm-
please, anyone else interested? That's what she's really saying. All those in favor of Michelle as vice president, say aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. We now have the lineup. Sandy, you'll take care of that and make the announcement for us? Send out an announcement to everybody in the.
Yes, I will send out the new roster,
All right,
or
great.
slate, I should say.
I want to put out, and I will later put out an email on this, but I do want to point out that we're at the end of the year. Next year is coming. It's time to collect dues. I know our dues are awfully expensive at $20 for the year, but if people could see it your way to shell out the money, it would be, and let's see, our treasurer is Joe. And Joe, tell people how they can give their $20 to the organization.
You can pay it through PayPal or send a check to our PO box.
Which is, what is our PO box?
Sandy, would you tell us the PO box number, please?
I'd have to look it up.
I
do
know
not
it.
off
I
the
know
top
it.
of my head.
Okay.
Call
It's
me.
on the website.
I
Okay,
know it
Lynn.
because it's partly my birthday. It's 11:54. I was born in
Yay,
1954.
Lynn.
Oh, woohoo. And Joe, will you be sending out an email to all the members just to give us a little kick in the
I can
caboose?
see that gets done, yes.
Yeah, and also how you address the PayPal.
Well, let me,
If you put that in there.
Yeah, I'm sure Joe will take care of that, right, Joe?
Yeah, what, Lynn?
I just wanted to say I kind of was fooling around, but the address is P.O. Box 1154, and it's in Hemet 92546.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Is it 46 or 43?
It's 46 for the P.O. Box.
Okay,
That actual, I got corrected on that by a tax guy.
okay.
I noticed that Howard has joined us recently. Hello, Howard. And for those of you who don't know, Howard is running for city treasurer of Hemet.
Yay!
Wow.
All right. Thank you.
So, all right. At this point, I am going to turn over the meeting to Joe. And we have our first prose reading of in our 5 years of existence. And we see this as perhaps kind of a coattails with the poetry reading. So Joe, I'm going to at this spot put it on speaker view, and I'm going to mute everybody else. All right, and only those people who are talking, who are reading, will be on the screen. Okay. So first, I'm on speaker view now, and I am muting all. Everybody is now muted, and I'm going to, at this spot, unmute Joe, and you have to unmute yourself. I ask to unmute, you unmute then, all right? Joe? You can unmute yourself. There you go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I was pleased to see that you said first annual prose reading, Jim. That's being very generous. If you can't understand me or don't like the program, blame my dentist. I'm not sure the Novocaine's completely worn off.
Oh, God.
If you like the program, I'll give you his name if you'd like. I've been writing short stories since elementary school, where I fell in love with Mark Twain and O. Henry. In high school, before goth became a thing, I discovered Poe. Several creative writing classes failed to address short stories specifically, so I decided to research them on my own. I discovered there are a plethora of books on the subject, some of them quite pricey, but they all seem to say the same things in just a little different words. This is by no means a tutorial on short story writing, but there are some facts to keep in mind. There are categories of stories based on word count. Flash fiction is up to 1,500 words. All but the excerpts today qualify as flash fiction. A short is up to 3,000 words. A short story is up to 7,500 words. A novelette is 17,500 words, and a novella is no more than 25,000, and they may cover any subject genre. Jerry Jenkins advises reading, as Sandy said, as many stories as you can from as many different authors. Edgar Allan Poe wrote short stories to challenge the British idea that literature had to be long and wordy to be good. Many writers start out with a plan to create a great novel. Both Jerry Jenkins and Jonathan Maybury advises starting small and working up to a bigger piece. And Jonathan uses writing a short story as a sort of palate cleanser when he gets stuck while working on a larger novel or a screenplay. The lessons I've been able to distill from all of the how-to books on short story writing make a fairly short list. And the first one, of course, is read. The second, and he reminded us that We all stumbled and tottered when we first started to walk. And it took a while for us to be able to walk steadily. Determine the mood or emotion you want to evoke. Go for the heart. Limit the story to specific time, place, event, interaction, or character evolution. Capture a moment. The plot should have some difficult problem. Your character has made attempts to fix it, but failed, and then through heroic effort or major change, succeeds. Avoid too much backstory. Start with a strong, compelling opening, a hook. Build the story quickly. Don't forget to engage the senses. Land the ending that satisfies the reader and gets the main character out of his predicament. And make your title sing, which is a hook in itself. Brett Lott recommended giving yourself permission to be bad in your first efforts. And that often discourages people when they fail to live up to their own expectations, to give up. Jerry Jenkins said short story writing is a good learning ground and also gives us a chance to get a million cliches out of our system. At the end of each reading today, you will have an opportunity to comment or ask questions of the author. Unfortunately, the Zoom process makes applause difficult, but please let our readers know that you heard them. And readers, this is an opportunity to give you a quick toot of your own horn about your work to inspire the rest of us. To start our readings, I'm going to share a story inspired by an event I saw as I was driving to a critique group meeting. I called it Lost Pinky Rabbit. I stood on the seat and pressed my face against the back window of our little truck as Mama drove away from the house as fast as she could. This wasn't the first time we ran away from that man. Both of us were afraid he would wake up and follow us. It had happened before, and going back was worse than staying there. I couldn't see the house anymore, but kept watching. I didn't cry until the big wind from a huge truck caught the paper grocery sack holding all my clothes and whipped it out of the back of our pickup. I yelled at Mama to stop, but she kept driving. We can't stop now. He'll catch us if we go back. I'm not going to do this again. One of us will die if we do. She kept talking and I quit listening. Tears were making my t-shirt wet and my nose was running. I knew she wasn't listening to me. I screamed inside at her when a car hit the bag, scattering clothes all over the road, and Pinky was run over. My heart got run over too. Pinky was my bestest only friend. A nice policeman gave him to me when we ran away 2 times ago when I was 4. The bunny always hid with me when that man started yelling at Mama. Pinky went everywhere with me, but this time Mama stuffed him in the bottom of the bag she put my clothes in. She was moving really fast. She promised we wouldn't have to hide anymore if I hurried. My bunny's pink body was a little dirty and he'd lost one of his eyes, but he knew all my secrets and the best hiding places. He was good to hug. What was I going to do now? I was all alone. Mama was still talking, mostly to herself, and she didn't even care that Pinky was gone. I sobbed until I couldn't cry anymore. I wiped my nose on my sleeve because my hands were trying to reach out to Pinky. The road went over a hill and around a curve, and I lost sight of the spilled bag and Pinky. I was so tired. I slid down onto the seat, curled into a ball, and fell asleep. I woke up when my mother stopped outside a grocery store to use the payphone. I didn't know where we were or what time it was, maybe afternoon. We'd left that house just before the sun came up. I was still in my pajamas because she was in such a hurry to leave. Now I didn't have any clothes to put on. Still talking to herself, Mother got back into the pickup, but didn't start it. Where are we going? We have to wait here a little bit until a policeman comes. He'll show us where to go. I fell asleep again, listening to, he's never going to do that again. I'm not going to let, should have. I woke when I heard a man's voice ask, is he likely to be armed? What kind of a vehicle will he be driving? I rubbed my eyes trying to pay attention, but I didn't understand all they were saying. After they talked a little more, he said, just follow me, ma'am. He led us around several blocks, going down an alley where we could leave the pickup. A gate in a big high fence opened and a lady led us in. She hugged my mother and said, you are doing the right thing. Come on in. Now I understand. I remember being here before. That was when the nice policeman gave me Pinky Rabbit. I wondered what kind of animal I'll get this time. Sorry, I lost my note. Our next reader is Sandy Hubbard, our guru of writing techniques and rules. She's been working on her memoir and is now polishing it for print. The title of her contribution today is It's Official, I'm an Old Fart. Sandy?
This is based on a phone call I received a few years ago. The phone rings. Hello, I say, and instead of a loving, familiar voice, I'm greeted with the measured cadence of a recording. Hello, this is a survey. We are not selling anything. Your answers to a series of questions will help establish television programming. Your views are important and will take only 10 minutes of your time. Typically, I hang up on recorded calls unless it's Kaiser confirming my medical appointments. However, in my younger days, I worked at home for the American Research Bureau, making telephone calls enticing people to record their viewing or listening habits for a week. That collected data influenced programming then as it does now today. So now I'm excited. My opinion is requested and I'll have some effect on programming. A smile. The robotic voice continues. Using your touchpad to record answers, press 1 if you're female, press 2 if you're male. In that little space of time, waiting for the next question, I amuse myself by thinking, well, at least there's not a press 3. Next, press in your age. I push 7, then 3. I'm now poised to offer my thoughtful programming ideas. The voice then says, your answers have been recorded. Thank you. Click. Dial tone. What the? And then comes the aha. Sandy, you are officially an old fart. I'm laughing now. Judging by results, the advertisers backing this survey want a younger demographic than septuagenarians. How could I have not known? Perhaps it's because I still harbor fantasies about hitting my growth spurt, so I no longer have to shop petites or cut the bottoms off pant legs. Perhaps it's because for over 25 years, I've enjoyed my genuine, artificial, natural, auburn red hair coloring that masks not only the mousy brown, but conceals any gray daring to creep up from the roots. Perhaps it's from dismissing the arthritic knees as an old athletic injury from having tried to learn to ski at 40 and to ice skate at 57. Perhaps it's because I still have all my marbles except for the ones that tell me where I've left my glasses or what I intended to say next. Perhaps it's because I'm still Twitter-pated by the grandfather of our 8 grandchildren and feel inwardly like that young woman I was in my college days. The clues to knowing were there. I'd gradually opted for wearing comfortable shoes except on special occasions. My movements had become punctuated by sound. Oof, when I stood up. Ah, when I sat. When I look around trying to remember why I walked into the kitchen. Then there was that time I said something about most rap music being noise, and that I was happy I don't have to say, oh, honey, they're playing our song, and it's I like big butts. Like a cat stalking prey, old fartisms have maneuvered stealthily into my life. My delicious Goline fiber cereal causes high decibel flatulence. So unless I'm planning on visiting deaf people, it's necessary to plan the days on which I eat my Goline. Fortunately, flatulence is a continuing source of family amusement and is judged as an Olympic event. I'm a contender, but Grandpa currently holds the family gold medal as determined by 3 grandchildren. I may decide to seriously train for the record by eating Goline for breakfast and spicy chili with extra kidney beans for lunch. Then gather the judges. The good news, I don't feel old, and I don't look as old as I am yet, especially if I don't look into a full-length mirror in bright light. Now, when I need some help, I can play the old fart card and board the plane early or attend evening movies at matinee prices. I think, too bad it ain't mind over matter, because if it were, I'd be the youngin' I feel. It's really too bad that the body defies the mind's ruminations. Mirrors clearly reflect the results of gravity and the passage of time. But in my mind, old is at least 1 decade older than whatever age I currently am. I'm merely aging. That mercurial decade ahead represents old. I dial the phone. Hello, sister, I say. Guess what? I'm officially an old fart. She laughs and we settle in for a long chat about our lives, politics, and current ailments, as old farts are wont to do.
Hey, Sandy, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, first of all, that was wonderful. I was laughing through a lot of it.
Thank you.
It really hits the spot. What I'm curious, you mentioned a word like Twitter paid or something like that.
Twitter pated, that comes from Bambi and Walt Disney Thumper, and they're saying I'm Twitter pated. It means that your heart's all aflutter, that early flush of love and romance.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone among us that can't relate?
I definitely relate.
Our next reader, Karen Robertson, author of many published short stories, speaker, actor, humorist, shares a memoir today. And by the way, she's going to be on the radio, right, Karen?
Actually on Facebook.
Oh, is it Facebook?
Yeah, it's on Facebook tomorrow night, I think. And I bored you all. I think I sent it out to everyone, didn't I?
I saw it somewhere.
Yeah, probably on
Can I
Facebook.
just say that it's on our Diamond Valley Writers Guild Facebook page. There's a link to it if you want to click on it, be able to listen.
Okay. Yeah, it's tomorrow night for us California people. It's 4:30. It's 7:30 where she's producing it, but it's 4:30 here. So it's kind of a
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Karen's sharing a memoir with us today called Caution. Karen?
Well, actually, I've changed the name to Ode to Caution. Thank you, Joe. She wasn't cuddly or loving, and she hid out when strangers came to the house. She might stand for a little petting once in a while, as long as it was on her terms. If you tarried too long, got too far down her back, or near her tummy, you were sure to wear scars from the slashes her claws could inflict in a split second. But that isn't why we named her Caution. 20 years ago, Barry, my husband, the firefighter, was on duty when his crew got a strange request. Some construction workers had called to say they heard meows from a newly erected traffic signal near their job site. Although firefighters don't make it a habit to rescue kittens, this was an unusual situation, and the chief asked the crew to respond. The men grabbed a cardboard box, a can of tuna, and manned a ladder truck for the rescue. Without red lights or screaming sirens, they arrived at the intersection of said meowing. The truck was parked and the ladder extended so the men could climb to the end of the traffic signal arm. The cap was removed and the sounds of crying feline emitted. Barry and his captain attempted to coax the kitten to come to the end of the arm unsuccessfully. The tiny kitten wanted help but resisted their beckoning hands. The can of tuna was opened and the kitten came closer, but attempts to grab her only caused her to draw back farther into the pipe. Barry discovered a hole in the pipe about 10 inches back from the opening. The next time the captain coaxed the kitten close to the can of tuna, Barry shoved a hammer handle into the hole and blocked the kitten's escape. With gloved hands, he extracted the tiny crying animal. With the kitten safely in the box, they descended the ladder, closed up shop, and proceeded to drive away. In the rearview mirror, Barry could see the construction men waving to get their attention. A speedy U-turn and they arrived back at the intersection. As they looked up at the arm of the traffic signal, they espied another tiny paw waving frantically from the hole where Barry had inserted the hammer handle. Again, the ladder was extended and they ascended with tuna and water in hand. This time, they used their tried and true system, coaxing the second kitty by blowing tuna aroma into the tube. With gloved hands ready and a hammer handle trap, they soon had kitten number 2 captive. Barry called me at the office. "Hey, honey, stop by the station on your way home from work. I've got 2 kittens in a box you can take home. Wait till you hear the story." I picked up the box and heard the story. "Let's name them Stop and Go, since they came out of traffic signal," I suggested, and we agreed. We figured the mother cat hid her babies in the traffic arm when it was laying in the storage yard. When it was loaded on a flatbed truck for the bumpy ride to the intersection, the mother probably panicked and escaped, leaving her babies to huddle together alone and frightened. Stop and Go were pretty wild, but they made their home in our barn. 4 days later, another call came from the construction workers. They thought they heard a third kitten. 8 days had gone by since the traffic signal was installed, but the firefighters had left the open can of tuna and a cup of water just in case. Sure enough, one more trip up the ladder and kitten number 3 was rescued. As small as Barry's palm, she nestled by his neck that night as he rested in his recliner at the station. She was officially named Caution, and her birthday, April Fool's Day, 2000. She was so attached to Barry, he was afraid she would get stepped on while he saddled his horse or worked with the animals. When Stop and Go disappeared, probably dinner for some sneaky coyote, Caution was immediately promoted to house cat. For 20 years and 6 months, she entertained us with her conniption fits, scratched us when we tried to be too friendly, yelled demands at us when she was hungry or when she wanted in or out. But today, October 1st, 2020, we miss her more than words can express. The end. Thank you.
Everybody's dabbing their eyes.
Joe,
Joe, you're muted.
Yeah, Joe's muted.
Jim, our esteemed president, is going to share an excerpt from a longer short story titled Like an Earthquake. Jim?
Yeah, this is what I'm going to read is actually this is online right now, both as a complete short story, and it's also the first time I tried to do anything to do an audio recording of it. So it's you can find it either way or both, for that matter. And it's entitled Like an Earthquake. I will say that it's also part of a longer work that I am now, it's out with an agent, and we'll see if something happens there, called The Carney Way. But originally this became was the opening of the novel. There are other writers that have done the same thing. James Baldwin did Tell Me How Long the Train's Been Gone, and it was a short story that became part of the novel. And other writers have done the same. So this was a standalone story, and it runs about 20 pages or so. And this is the opening. When I was 17, the year was 1949, I obsessed about love and sex, especially sex. But I didn't know diddly squat about either. What teenage boy does, unless he's Romeo Capulet, and he's only a character in a play. Sure, I'd had crushes on girls. I even took a couple to the movies, but I gleaned my knowledge of female anatomy from men's magazines and Vargas calendars. In the 8th grade, I kissed a girl at a party. 6 of us, 3 boys and 3 girls, hid behind a house to play spin the bottle. My turn arrived. I twirled the bottle, which revolved 3 times before the neck pointed at Barbara Rushing. Half a head taller than I, she developed beyond her 14 years. When I kissed her, she responded as she liked it, but our relationship ended before it began. Her father was a Baptist pastor whose fire and brimstone personality erected a sign, "Boys Beware." At the time, my mother and I lived alone in Dallas on Beacon Street. The boarding house, a 2-story frame, 40 years old, smelled of rot and mildew. Even though we lived on the bottom floor, water stained the ceiling. The wood flooring was warped so badly that crossing from one side of the room to the other was like a hike through hill country. At night, after we turned out the lights, cockroaches scurried across the floor like a conquering army. If I got up during the night, they crunched under my feet all the way to the bathroom. We battled rats, too. We set traps in the kitchen and on the back porch. Day and night, they snapped with a loud clack and a death squeal. Beside the vermin, the walls were so thin we heard those who lived around us as if they camped in our living room. Across the hallway, Mrs. Smith, a divorcee, entertained different men 3 or 4 times a week. Moans emanated from her apartment at all hours. Above Mrs. Smith lived an elderly couple, the Nestlers, both in their late 70s. Mr. Nestler suffered from a bad heart, and his heavy breathing pervaded our apartment like winter wind. The worst were the couple who lived above us, the Bartolettis, who Mom called the Bickersons after characters on a radio show. They fought over money and over his infidelities. Sometimes their arguments ended in blows. Residents called the police, but their intrusions failed to haunt the mayhem, so the Bartolettis continued their assaults on one another and indirectly on us. Mr. Bartoletti delivered Lone Star beer. Often on lunch break, he parked his delivery truck in front of our apartment building. When I met him on the porch or the sidewalk, he'd wish me good day, but with his dark hair slicked back, his heavy eyebrows, his brooding nature, he reminded me of a hood in a gangster movie. He asked me to call him Nick, but he was over 30. I couldn't call anyone by his first name, anyone that old by his first name. One evening, I arrived home from school to encounter him leaving our apartment. I asked Mom what he was doing there. He and his wife are having trouble. She's gone to visit her mother. He asked me for my advice. I told Mom I feared her getting involved. We just talked, nothing to get me in trouble. Despite her fondness for Nick Bartoletti, Mom hated the apartment as much as I. She often talked of buying a house, a 2-bedroom with a lawn where she could plant roses. At best, she was a romantic optimist, at worst, delusional. On her salary, we barely made ends meet, and a savings account was for those far more fortunate than we. Sometimes on weekends, I mowed lawns for spare change, but when I suggested I get a part-time job, my mother vetoed the idea. You'll not throw away your tomorrow for a few dollars today. School is the most important thing. We'll make do. We'd lived at that apartment so long, I remember no other place we ever lived. In those days of my mercurial youth, I thought the world immutable, frozen, unchangeable. Such an idea is an illusion of youth. Life does change, sometimes cataclysmically, like an earthquake that rumbles from deep inside the earth to crack open your life in quite unexpected and indelible ways. I learned that lesson one Friday in late May. And
Thank you, Jim. Is Jack Mulcahy among us? He was to read next. He lives in Ambler, Pennsylvania, and just submitted an excerpt to read to us.
I do not see him on our participants list.
Okay, then we'll go to published writer, publisher, speaker, and instructor. Marge Chalier has an excerpt from her soon-to-be published novel, The Rebel Nun. Marge?
Thanks. I feel a little shy because you guys are such great readers. And I'm really impressed. I'm not sure that I can keep it up. I just wanted to show you, if you can see this, this is the ARC of my book that's coming out in March. An ARC, as you know, is just a paperback version of the book that's sent out to reviewers so that you can get some advanced reviews and advanced blurbs. So what I want to read is the first half of the prologue. And what's interesting about, I think, this is that so many writing instructors tell you don't do prologues. Prologues are unnecessary and you shouldn't write them. Well, I wrote this book without a prologue, and my agent and my publisher came back to me and said, we want a prologue. So there you go. The best advice isn't always widely shared. So I'll just start here. This is set in 613 AD in Gaul, south of Paris. The hour I learned of Hilda's death, the cool autumn mist had crept into my garden, telling me it was time to call a truce with the weeds and the bugs for the night. From stiff knees, the effort of rising forced a low moan from my lungs. I brushed the dirt from my hands and picked up a sack to gather the herbs that I had harvested that afternoon. It was at the time of the day when, usually, I would look forward to a comforting fire and a quiet evening meal of fresh cheese, bread, and watered wine in the villa's garden shack that I had made my home. And I would crawl under an old blanket and bid the world goodbye for the night, perhaps forever, for all I knew. But that night I would not sleep. Under the full moon, my friends and I would celebrate the moon goddess Mani with the rituals we revived when I returned to this village 22 years ago. I found the women eager to reclaim our ancestral pagan rites. Careful to keep my balance, I bent to collect bundles of borage for stomach ailments, betony to relieve headaches, sage to treat the village children's persistent colds, and rosemary to ward off nightmares. Hens scuttled out of the way, flapping their wings, irritated at me for interrupting their feast of cabbage worms. At first, their flurry and cackling kept me from noticing the lone rider coming through the chestnut trees between my garden and the main house. Sister, he called out, startling me. I looked up and froze. Only one kind of visitor would address me as a nun. Messenger from the posse loyal to my Aunt Hilda, known as Queen Brunhild to most of the world. He had been the one to rescue me from the church's suffocating grasp, had never stopped referring to me as a penitent. My heart clenched painfully. Only one thing would bring this envoy to my door after so many years. When? I asked, tears already swelling under my eyelids. A week ago. A large man slipped off his mount and walked toward me with the horse's reins in one hand, his fur cap clenched to his chest in the other. I'm sorry for the delay. The Queen's enemies swarm like wasps, even now. I had to avoid the roads. Many times I had to stop and hide for hours. I studied him. He looked like so many of Hilda's men, tall, exceptionally strong, with long blonde hair and sky blue eyes. Not so different from the man who had held my heart for so many years, now traveling the heavens with the Valkyries, as only the worthiest are chosen to do. Come inside, I motioned to the door of my hut. You must be weary, and the autumn chill is creeping into my bones. I need to know everything. News was worse than I could have imagined. Nearly 80 years old, the oldest person I had ever known, my aunt, queen to the late King Sigebert, had been dragged by the hair and torn limb from limb by horses, surrounded by a drunken, cheering horde of her political and religious enemies. Few women in our time have acted so bravely or had so much influence over our kingdom as she did. But in the end, Hilda had fewer friends than powerful foes. A gang of Catholic bishops and counts allied themselves with Clothar, my evil great-nephew, and ordered Hilda's execution. Clothar and his bishops now reigned over Austrasia and the territory known as Neustria, which my own father once ruled. The women who gathered for the full moon ceremony later that night were as distraught as I was over the news. Through clouds of incense, we chanted praises to the moon goddess until our voices were hoarse from song and smoke. We passed communal goblets of wine and cider and tossed bundles of herbs and fragrant branches into the bonfire. These were the same rituals as ever. Hanging over us was a raw fear, new awareness of how vulnerable we were. If Hilda, with all her cunning and wiles, could face such a brutal end, we knew that the king who ordered her execution could, at any time, command men to storm our gatherings, lay axes to our altar, and swords to our flesh, as could any man of the church. So,
Wow.
thank you.
Yeah, you did extremely well. I don't know why you were hesitant.
Somehow I managed to get through it. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for sharing it. Our guild's founding president, published author and speaker Lynn Spreen, brought us an excerpt from her novel, Trucker. Lynn? Unmute, please. Lynn? You, okay.
Moving parts.
I was so excited about reading. It took me a minute to figure out what I was doing. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited about reading from this. It's actually a short story. It's a collection of short stories called Middle-Aged Crazy. And I was recently named one of readers' favorites, 5-star writers. So I got a 5-star award, and I promptly stuck it without having any,
Congratulations.
hesitation at all on my book. So I write about midlife people starting over. And this is a short story about a middle-aged Latina who used to work as a teacher for the court school system. She was teaching high school boys one day when one boy attacked her. And he was really the size of a man, and it traumatized her so much that she had to take a long-term leave. She quit her job. She ran out of money. She ended up living on her brother's couch. Her name is Rita, and her brother finally got tired of her just laying around doing nothing. And so he brought her along with him as he would make his runs as a long haul trucker. Rita was entranced by this idea right away. The idea that you could be out on the road talking with no one except over a CB and virtually be isolated, but still make money enough to live and to be out on the open road. She thought that was a good idea. So she went to trucker school and she learned how to be a trucker, but she's still 55 years old with all the aches and pains and everything that that comes with. So in this particular story, which I'm going to read from about the middle to the end of it, it's not that long, don't worry, but Rita is approaching the summit at Donner Pass. There's a snowstorm approaching. Her dispatcher told her that she shouldn't go out. She went anyway. She needs to get down into Sacramento with her load. But now things are getting really bad. So I'll pick it up from there. Now the cold wind howled through the forest, and Rita braced herself against the blast. A few snowflakes landed, and she wondered if she had waited too long to chain up. Her instructor, a man with bleached hair, tattoos, and pieces of metal in his earlobes, liked to say that some things could only be learned through experience, and he hoped she would live long enough to learn them. Kneeling down next to the outside drive wheel, Rita spread the links of chain. Nearby, a paw print in the snow spoke of recent visitors. The print bore no claw marks, and it was too big for a bobcat, according to what she remembered from teaching science class. So then it was probably lion. Her gloves prevented frostbite in the relentless wind, but the chill penetrated through her heavy parka. Wind swirled wet brown leaves around the heavy tires. Downslope, tall pines bent and moaned in the face of the second front. The diesel rumbled, waiting, its power vibrating through the blacktop. Rita stood and rubbed her lower back. She longed for a hot shower and warm bed. There was a travel center outside Roseville where she could park for the night, get a shower, and do a load of laundry. Then she would lock herself in the sleeper cab, fix dinner in the microwave, and open a bottle of Riesling from the fridge. Secure in her little nest, she'd check her email and perhaps watch Dancing with the Stars on satellite TV. Night would be spent in the safety of numbers, trucks lined up shoulder to shoulder in the vast parking lot. Sometimes the lot lizards banged on the door of her cab, hoping to ply their trade within. When they saw the driver was a woman, they'd slink away. If the girl looked pitiful enough, Rita would slip her a few bucks through a barely cracked window. The gathering gloom told her it was well past 3. She knelt next to the wheel. Between gusts, the forest fell silent. Not even a raven showed up to squawk insults at her from the high branches. All the other creatures were smart enough to be out of the weather. Rita's fingers stopped and she turned her head, the better to listen. Another truck? No, the sound wasn't coming from the road. It was coming from down below, the sound of wind roaring up through the pines and up the slope toward her. Before she could react, the massive squall slammed broadside into the 18-wheeler, rocking the rig and knocking Rita under the trailer. Cursing the storm, she reached for an overhead crossbar with which to pull herself back up. But the crossbar had slipped out of reach. The rig moved 6 inches, and then it moved again. Rita squirreled out from underneath and scrambled to her feet. 80,000 pounds of brand new medical equipment had begun inching away on the icy highway. 1 foot, 2. The rig was sliding backwards on the slick grade on its way to the edge of the road and the deep canyon beyond. With a mighty heave and a shriek worthy of Serena Williams, Rita hurled a set of chains toward the truck. The chains arced through the air and landed in a heap behind the sliding drive wheels. The tractor thundered up onto the links, mashing steel into the blacktop as the giant dualies fought for purchase. With one last great tremor, the rig shuddered to a stop, idling patiently now as snow began to fall in earnest. Gaping, incredulous, Rita bent over and threw up. Hands shaking, she climbed up into the cab and eased the rig forward and off the chains. Then she set the brake, chalked the tires, and knelt back down to finish the work, humbled by the fact that negligence could have cost her the load, and probably her life too, considering that nobody would have come to rescue her. She finished chaining up, retrieved the chocks, and climbed back in the cab. 30 minutes later, she took the 18-wheeler over the summit's crest and down toward the city. Sacramento was only a couple hours away. The worst part of the storm was behind her, and the road ahead looked clear. Rita turned on the CB, found a channel, and listened to the chatter, reassured by the easy banter and non-stop smart-mouthing. If she ever got up the nerve to tell about it, what a story this would make. Wouldn't the other drivers love it? They would laugh and make fun of the old lady school teacher who almost lost her load, but then they would offer to buy her a beer because they had their stories too.
Can I breathe now?
Thank you.
Super. To finish our program today, I'm going to flash you. No, don't cringe. I'm going to read you a flash fiction piece I call It Says Here. We can all use a little levity these days. Some people put great stock in their horoscopes as a way to anticipate their future. I found Chinese fortune cookies have more accuracy for me. However, the outcome is never quite what I expect. For instance, a fortune cookie prediction of expect endless affection from tall, dark, and handsome led me to believe that a Ricardo Montalban lookalike would have eyes only for me. Reality? When I opened my front door, a huge black dog knocked me down and covered my face with slobbery kisses. Now, most people receive generic fortune cookie messages about having success in business, receiving money from a distant relative, or having an interesting love life. Can't you just imagine an impersonal machine stamping out those fortunes with a bored assembly line worker packaging them by choosing 3 dozen from column A and 4 dozen from column B? I believe that somewhere there is an ancient Chinese monk inscrutably meditating on special fortunes to tantalize and torment me. One of the pesky little strips of paper said, "Keep your plans secret for now." My plans are so secret, I don't even know what they are. I'm still puzzling over the one that read, "You will have a potential urge." I go for months at a time avoiding fortune cookies and then have a craving to have just one more. It's a sickness with me. I try to resist, and then wham, the ancient one has blindsided me again. One day I gave in to temptation and had lunch at the Golden Dragon. My fortune cookie read, "Humor and color will sweeten your life." Who could resist such a harmless and pleasant message? On my way to work, I picked up a cake from the bakery for a coworker's birthday. As I was crossing the parking lot, the cake and I were run down by a clown carrying a bicycle and a bouquet of balloons. You know, on second thought, I'm going to give up on fortune cookies and start reading my horoscope. The last fortune cookie I had said, "You should presently begin to play with a full deck." Thank you, readers, for sharing your work. And I hope the rest of you enjoyed hearing their stories. I also hope we have encouraged more of you to tell your own stories. Thanks for participating. Over to you, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Joe. You did a great job. I don't know how anybody else felt here, but I really enjoyed listening to everybody's stories, the readings. I thought they were all terrific. And it was a real pleasure. I would like to point out a couple of things I found interesting about the readings. One, I was the only male. Now, that only says something about women being 75% of the reading audience, I think, to some extent. But I also want to point out that a couple of things I noticed about the readings. The variety of the readings was very interesting, but there were connections. The story that Joe started out with, Jolene started out with, Pinky has a connection with caution. There's a real connection between the two. There is a kind of a connection between my story and Lynn's. Mine is a coming of age, which is finding your way, and she writes about middle-aged people trying to find their way, starting over again. Mine is starting for the first time. I'm always intrigued by coming of age stories, but there's a connection between the two in terms of finding our ways. And of course, Marge with her historical, but the one thing that they all have in common is the humanity that is in the stories. And I think that's what really comes across. And I find that listening to other writers helps me as a writer. It helps me see where I can improve my own work. It was really terrific. I really enjoyed that. I guess unless someone has some new business that you would like to discuss right now,
Maybe they want to comment.
or you want to comment on what has taken place, feel free to do so right now. I'm going to unmute everybody.
Well, I have something to say. I would like to congratulate our new board members, Lynette, Karen, and Michelle, promoting to the new position. I'm really proud of all of us for what we've done with the Guild. Just looking at you all on the screen right now, you know, with COVID, we haven't had what we wanted, which is the in-person interaction. But this is good to see you all here and to interact, the synergy, the feeling of creativity, the friendship. I just treasure that so much. And so I appreciate the people that are willing to step forward and keep this thing going. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
I would like to say am I unmuted?
Jim, could you unmute everybody? So we can all talk and visit.
Karen, I heard you fine.
Oh, okay.
Heard you too.
You guys
Yeah,
might
I
have
was-
to unmute yourselves.
I was just going to thank Joe for putting that together because that was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy the poetry thing and I enjoy this. And like Jim says, more of you should take the opportunity because it is a fun experience.
Thank you.
And every single one of them was fun to listen to. So it was great.
Yeah, it was fun.
Hopefully next year you'll have room for me.
I have to say, as I watched you guys read, I have to back up what Marge said about being impressed, because I think I'd get 2 sentences into something I was reading and my lips would dry up and stick. And then I wouldn't be able to go on. I don't know. I think it takes a talent to read. It really does in public.
Cheryl,
What?
when I was reading, my heart was pounding. And when Marge was finishing up, I was like trying to do deep breathing to calm myself down. And it's just you guys, but still, it's like, it's scary. It is.
It's very scary, but I know what my body does, and it betrays me constantly.
I had sweaty palms before my turn, and I even wrote myself a note at the top saying, don't forget to press record. And then I totally forgot.
Well, I pressed record.
Oh, no.
I pressed record and it said, you can't do it.
Oh,
Marge, were you able to record yours?
Yeah, I
Okay.
was, yeah.
interesting.
Although I forgot to do what I should have done, which was to introduce the book. So now I have to figure out how to go back and record an introduction that makes sense for YouTube. So I
And
didn't do very well.
if you want to reread it, just do your own little Zoom, a meeting of one, and then upload that to,
That's what I should do. Thanks for the idea. That was a great idea.
Well, Greg knows what I really prioritize. What was the word, book whore? I like to sell. I like to market.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Would you be willing to market for me? I don't really like it.
I do, Marge. It's like fishing. You put out different kinds of bait and you see if you get any bites.
Yeah, it takes so much time. You don't have time to write.
I have a rule that I just do marketing for 30 minutes a day, and whatever gets done, and what doesn't get done, oh well.
But Lynn, that's a talent to market, because a lot of artists won't. My son is an artist, and marketing is nowhere on his horizon.
Right.
And I try to tell him how I will market him, and he shuts me down, So I think, for the artists and writers and people like that can feel comfortable, marketing and creating. I think that's a real blessing.
Yeah. It doesn't happen very often because creative people love their craft, but they hate doing business.
That's right.
And that's why when I was a business coach, I found that creatives were the hardest to work with. And that I say that's why so many artists didn't get famous until they were dead. because then somebody else discovered their work and marketed it.
Yeah, that might mean that an obituary is your best marketing tool.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd like plan B. If that's plan A, I'd like plan B.
Cindy, did you have something you want to say?
I'm not sure if my microphone was working. I just wanted to say that I am so pleased with everything that I heard, and nothing endears a reader or a listener to an author who gets choked with emotion or puts emphasis in their reading. And to see your faces and to hear and know the feelings that you have behind what you wrote is just inspiring. It was really wonderful to hear. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Karen.
Anybody else have anything to say?
I just want to say something that Lynn already said about Zoom. Zoom has kept a lot of us sane. In an hour, I am facilitating my 60th high school class reunion on Zoom.
Oh, all right. Great. That's great.
Crazy.
How can that be when you're only 50 years old?
I don't know.
Sandy, you had something you want to say?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Jo for how she put all this together and coordinated it, and look forward to doing it next year. And I wanted to thank you, Jim, for a successful year as president, and welcome the new board members. And I brought a little something during the days of New Yorkers going out at 4 o'clock. I did it at our time because my granddaughter was in New York. And so I would cheer her being a physician in a COVID facility. And this was. So even though I was alone out on my balcony, I had an audience to cheer her on, and I cheer you all on as well.
So, Sandy, I would like to point out you're still on the board for one more meeting. Don't get out of that. And Lynette, I will also give you the, you're welcome to join us for the next meeting. I'll get the information to you, okay? And you can join us, and we can go through that meeting. It is the second Tuesday in November.
The 10th, yeah. Sandy and Dennis, thank you so
No,
much.
the board does.
Oh, the board does.
Board means the second Tuesday in November, and it's at 9 o'clock, right, guys?
But that's not me, right? That's
yes. You can come.
Okay. Now the answer is yes, Karen. You can join too. I'll put a notice out for both of you, and you can join in our meeting and see what it's like and say, oh, God, did I make a mistake? Or you can jump up and down. Yay. But boy, I get my voice in this. 9 o'clock.
It's not a bad idea to come if you can.
Just to come in and see what it's like and get your feet wet. We did that. Joe and I did that the same time last year after we had been elected. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of, you kind of see what it's like. It's easy enough to do. It's for one thing, let's face it, this is a great group, a little bit smaller today than I anticipated, but still it's a great group. And everybody who wants to be a writer, you have something in common with automatically. Is there anything else? Anybody?
Dennis.
Hey, Dennis has something. Dennis.
Yes, I was going to say that last year I heard about New York Flash Fiction Contest. It starts, I think, you want to look ahead on it, the 31st, and they give you 24 hours to write your flash fiction piece. And this contest is pretty well known. And what they do is they have you enter your piece. And then if you make the first cut, you write again 3 months later. And then you enter again, you write 3 months later. And then you enter again if you make the cut 3 months later. And so it keeps going on there for a year if you happen to be a good writer. And it's got just 24 hours to write your flash fiction piece. And I think it starts at 12 midnight or something like that. So people work hard trying to make sure they do that on New Year's Eve or the day before there. So you might want to go ahead and take a look at that to see if that's something you're interested in.
Where do you look? Where do you find it?
I would just look online for a New York Flash Fiction Contest. That's where I found it last year.
If none of you are familiar with it, there's a thing called firstwriters.com. I subscribe to it. It's only about $4 a month or something like that, $4.95 a month. And they list everything, agents, book publishers, contests, everything. And the first contest I entered it that I won, it was off of there. And it was it carried a $500 prize that the contest I entered. And then I entered it for my first novel. They had a contest for novels, and I won the grand prize on that one. And so
Wow.
these things are available, and they're out there, and it's firstwriter.com. It's a very good website. In a lot of ways, I liked it better than Writer's Market. Lynn, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm sensitive to the fact that people who are calling in and listening are trying to talk on their phone, like Wendy, there's a little bit of a delay, and I'm not sure if Wendy has tried to say something. So Wendy, are you with us? Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I am with you, but I wasn't sure if I was muted or not, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Fine.
And Wendy suggested also a group called Funds for Writers, FUNDS for Writers. It's run by a woman named Hope Clark. And if you go to, I think it's fundsforwriters, .com or .net or .org or something, you can get a weekly email, and she also tells you about contests and things. And it's really, it's helpful and motivating.
All right. Anybody have any last words here?
Yes, Jim.
Yes.
I would like to wish everybody good holidays.
Yes.
And the hope that we can see each other in person in the new year.
Wouldn't that be
Absolutely.
nice?
Yeah, hopefully we can. Well, everybody, it has been wonderful again. And as far as the whole group is, we will see you again next year. Don't forget your dues.
Oh, yeah.
I know it may break you, but do your best. And until next year, for most of you, the board, the second Tuesday in November. Goodbye, everybody.
Oh, hold on one
Bye.
second.
Oh, wait. Dennis is
Yeah,
ready
I
for
want
it.
to let you know that the January speaker is a great man. His name's Tim. He's going to be sharing some information with us with Tim Writer. He's been a writer since he was a child, RITER. And he has a great program coming up for us next year. So that'll be the first one of the season. So we'll get a whole new good crop of people going to that. And I've heard him speak at other writers groups. He's going to be very craft oriented when he does his presentation.
Excellent.
Good.
Terrific.
All right. So long, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.